In this History Illustrated video, we're going to talk about the flower that broke Holland and why it keeps happening. In 1637, a man in Amsterdam paid the price of a canal house for a single flower bulb. Not a bouquet, not a garden, a bulb, which for the record, looks like a dirty onion. This is the story of history's first financial bubble, and a warning about something that never stopped happening. To understand why people lost their minds over a flower, you first need to understand 1630s Holland. By the 1630s, the Dutch Republic had already become one of Europe's richest and most financially sophisticated states. They had built the world's first publicly traded company, the VOC, or in English, the Dutch East India Company, and it turned Amsterdam into the financial capital of the world. They had money, they had taste, and apparently, they had time. Tulips arrived from the Ottoman Empire, exotic, colorful, completely unlike anything growing in a Dutch garden. A botanist named Carolus Clusius planted the first collection at the University of Leiden in 1593. He did not intend to share them. His garden was raided over and over, and here's the irony. Because he refused to sell a single bulb, those thefts are actually what spread the tulips across the Netherlands. The entire Dutch tulip industry was accidentally started by a botanist who just wanted to keep his own flowers. Then something strange happened to the flowers. A virus, though nobody knew it was a virus, caused the petals to develop extraordinary flame-like streaks of color, multicolored, dramatic, utterly unique. The Dutch decided this was nature performing a miracle. It was not. It was a disease. But it was a very pretty disease, so everyone agreed to be impressed. There was one more thing that nobody knew. The same virus that created those beautiful streaks was also slowly killing the flower. The most valuable tulips in history were dying from the thing that made them beautiful. By the 1630s, tulips weren't just flowers. They were status symbols, investment vehicles, and apparently a personality. Merchants competed to own the rarest varieties. The most coveted of all was the Semper Augustus, red and white flames on a white petal. Only 12 bulbs existed in 1624, all reportedly owned by a single collector. He refused to sell. This made everyone want it more. In the early 1620s, it was valued at around 1,000 guilders. By 1637, a single bulb was reportedly valued as high as 10,000. That's enough to buy one of the biggest canal houses in Amsterdam. For a flower that you bury in dirt. Semper Augustus no longer exists. The virus that made it the most expensive flower in history eventually destroyed it entirely. Gone. You cannot buy one today for any price. Trading moved from the streets and into taverns, where contracts for bulbs still in the ground changed hands over drinks. Nobody was trading actual flowers anymore. They were trading promises of flowers. Buyers paid a 2.5% fee per transaction. They called it wine money, and nobody posted any collateral. The entire market ran on handshakes and hope. Locals called it wind trading, which in hindsight was a pretty accurate name. There's a famous story from this period, possibly invented, about a sailor who arrived at a merchant's warehouse, spotted what he thought was an onion sitting on the counter, and ate it with his lunch. According to the story, it was a Semper Augustus bulb worth thousands of guilders. He was arrested and put in jail. The bulb, presumably, was delicious. Prices began to falter in early February of 1637. On February 3rd, an auctioneer in Haarlem put up the first lot. Nobody bid. He lowered the price. Still nothing. Then he lowered it again. According to accounts, the room had decided collectively and without discussion that it was over. The liquidity that had inflated the entire market evaporated almost instantaneously. Prices for some tulip contracts collapsed to a fraction of their peak value. The flower had not changed. The belief had. The contracts didn't just disappear, though. They had to be settled somehow. Eventually, buyers were allowed to cancel their deals by paying 3.5% of the contract price. The Dutch called it a recoup, grieving money. In practice, most people refused to pay even that. They just walked away. Now here's where the story gets more interesting and considerably less dramatic. Historians who actually dug through the Dutch archives found almost no one went bankrupt from Tulip Mania. No ruined merchants, no canal drownings, and when it came to who was actually trading, roughly 350 people total. Only 37 of them spent more than 300 guilders. This was not the whole country losing its mind. It was a small group of merchants making bad bets. The stories of total devastation were heavily exaggerated. People kept repeating it for 200 years until it became accepted history. The real crash was painful. It just wasn't an apocalypse. Though the stories that people were sharing were entertaining, those are just the ones that people kept sharing. Some things just don't change. The mechanism of Tulip Mania was not unique to tulips, or to the Dutch, or to the 1630s. The pattern looks like this. Something genuinely new and scarce appears. Early buyers make real money. Early buyers win. Everyone notices, and fear of missing out overrides every other instinct. Price detaches from value. Someone stops buying. Someone stops buying, and then everyone stops at once. In 2021, GameStop surged from roughly $20 up to $483. The company was losing money. Nobody cared. It wasn't about the company. NFTs sold for millions. A JPEG of a cartoon ape once sold for over $1 million. That same ape is now worth about $12,000. At least Tulip Mania was about a real flower. Crypto, the .com stocks, housing in 2008. The asset changes, the psychology doesn't. But here's the part that should make you genuinely uncomfortable. The famous story of Tulip Mania, the chimney sweeps, the canal drownings, the total ruin, was largely invented by people who wanted to warn others about greed. The warning itself became a myth, which means we spent 400 years telling an exaggerated story about human irrationality without noticing the irony of passing it around uncritically. We love Tulip Mania because it makes us feel smarter than the people who fell for it. This may be optimistic. Tulip Mania wasn't a story about a nation losing its mind. It was a story about rational people making reasonable bets until everyone made the same bet at the same time. That's not madness. That's just a Tuesday. The next bubble is already forming somewhere. The only question is whether you'll recognize it while you're inside it. History suggests probably not, but it's a nice thought. If you made it this far in the video, thanks. My name is Justin. I'm a high school teacher, which means I spent years looking for free resources that I can use in my classroom. So I often just make my own, and then I give them all away. Every illustration from this channel lives at historyillustrated.com. All of them are royalty free, so you can use them any way that you like. I've made free maps, activities, coloring pages, and other downloadable materials. Oh, and I have a full coloring book of all 47 presidents, all hand-drawn, available right now. Everything is free. See you next time.